Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of the UES Challenger, watching the stars through the main window. He had been in space for 3 years now, exploring systems far from Earth. As lieutenant commander, he led a crew of 42 humans on their first deep space mission. They were looking for new worlds, new life, and new friends among the stars. "Commander, we're picking up something strange," said Ryan Blake from his station. Ryan was their tactical officer, a man who could spot trouble from a million miles away. His fingers moved quickly over the controls as data flowed across his screen. Jake walked over to look at Ryan's readings. "What kind of strange?" "Energy signatures. Massive ones, and they're moving fast toward the Kepler system." Captain Lisa Martinez joined them at the tactical station. She was their leader, a woman who had spent years studying alien life. Her dark eyes showed concern as she read the data. "Those energy levels are off the charts. Whatever's making them has technology far beyond ours." The ship's engineer, Tony Garcia, called out from across the bridge. "Captain, I'm reading weapons fire, big weapons, the kind that could crack a moon in half." Lisa made her decision quickly. "Change course. Take us to the edge of the Kepler system. We need to see what's happening there." The Challenger turned toward the distant battle. As they got closer, the crew could see flashes of light in the darkness. The flashes were huge, lighting up space like tiny suns. Whatever was fighting out there had weapons that could destroy cities. Dr. Amy Parker, their medical officer, watched the battle through the ship's telescopes. She was quiet for a long time before speaking. "There are 2 different types of ships out there. They're fighting each other." "How can you tell?" Jake asked. Amy pointed to her screen. "Look at the weapon signatures. One side uses energy that makes sounds in space. The other side uses weapons that seem to eat through matter. They're completely different technologies." The Challenger moved closer, staying hidden behind a large asteroid. The crew watched in horror as the battle grew bigger. Ships the size of cities fired at each other with weapons that tore holes in space itself. When ships exploded, the light could be seen from billions of miles away. "My God," whispered Lisa. "They're destroying everything. Look at that planet." The crew watched as one of the inner planets in the system took a direct hit from a weapon beam. The planet cracked like an egg, its pieces flying apart in all directions. Millions of lives, if any had lived there, were gone in seconds. Ryan's instruments showed the full scale of the battle. "Captain, I count over 5,000 ships on each side. This isn't just a battle, it's a war." The fighting continued for hours. The human crew watched as ship after ship exploded or broke apart. Neither side seemed to be winning. They just kept fighting, throwing more and more ships into the battle. Tony noticed something else. "Look at those ship designs. Some of them look really old, like they've been fighting for a very long time, but others look brand new." Amy studied the wreckage floating in space. "The technology is incredible, but it's all built for war. I don't see any science ships, any exploration vessels, just weapons and more weapons." As the battle continued, Jake realized something terrible. This wasn't just one fight. The way both sides moved, the way they attacked, it was like they had done this many times before. This was routine for them. "How long do you think they've been fighting?" Jake asked Lisa. She shook her head. "I don't know. But look at this." Lisa pointed to her readings. "The asteroid field around us? It's not natural. These rocks used to be planets. Dozens of them." The crew fell silent. They were flying through the remains of dead worlds, planets that had been destroyed in previous battles. How many times had these 2 sides fought here? How many worlds had died? Sam Rodriguez, their navigation officer, spoke up from his station. "Captain, we're getting communication signals from both sides. They're not talking to each other, but they're talking to their own fleets." "Can you understand what they're saying?" Lisa asked. Sam shook his head. "It's not like any language we know. But the tone, it sounds angry. Really angry." The battle began to change as both sides pulled back. Ships that could still fight moved away from each other. the space between them filled with wreckage and the bodies of dead crew members from both sides. "They're retreating," Ryan observed. "Both sides at the same time." Lisa watched as the alien fleets moved to opposite ends of the system. "It's like they have rules. Fight until enough die, then stop and regroup." The aftermath was devastating. Entire fleets of broken ships drifted in space. The remains of the destroyed planet formed a new asteroid belt. The system that had once held worlds and maybe life was now a graveyard. Jake ordered the Challenger to move through the battlefield. They wanted to help any survivors, but what they found was worse than they expected. The alien crews were still alive in some ships, but they wouldn't accept help from the humans. Both sides seemed more interested in preparing for the next battle than in saving their own people. "This is insane," Tony said as they watched rescue ships from both fleets ignore damaged vessels from their own side. "They care more about fighting than saving lives." Amy tried to scan the alien survivors. "Their biology is completely different from ours, but they're clearly intelligent species. They built these ships, created these weapons, but they've turned all that intelligence toward destroying each other." The crew of the Challenger spent 3 days in the system, trying to understand what they had witnessed. Both alien fleets had moved to different parts of the galaxy, but they left behind enough wreckage to build 100 cities. Jake called his senior officers together in the meeting room. "We need to report this to Earth, but what do we tell them?" Lisa looked out at the ruined system. "We tell them that there's a war going on out here, a war so old and so big that it could destroy everything, including us." Ryan pulled up charts showing the local area. "If these two sides have been fighting this long and if they've destroyed this many systems, what happens when they run out of empty space to fight in?" The question hung in the air. Earth and its colonies lay in the direction both alien fleets had been expanding their war. Humanity had just discovered that they were not alone in the galaxy. They had also discovered that their new neighbors were locked in an endless war that consumed worlds. As the Challenger prepared to return to Earth with news of the Galactic War, Jake looked one last time at the destroyed system. Somewhere out there, 2 ancient civilizations were preparing for their next battle, and humanity was right in their path. 2 weeks after the battle, the Challenger was heading home when everything went wrong. Jake was reviewing his reports when Ryan's voice cut through the bridge. "Commander, we have company. Big company." Jake looked at the main screen and felt his heart sink. 6 massive ships surrounded them, each one the size of a space station. The ships were made of what looked like living crystal, glowing with inner light that pulsed like a heartbeat. "Those are Cathera vessels," Amy said, reading her scanner data. "One of the 2 sides from the battle." The crystal ships moved closer, without any warning. Lisa tried to send peaceful messages on all frequencies, but the aliens didn't respond. Instead, a bright beam shot out from the lead ship and wrapped around the Challenger like a rope made of light. "They're pulling us in," Tony reported from his station. "I can't break free. Their tractor beam is too strong." Jake ordered his crew to prepare for the worst, but he told them not to fight back. Humanity's single exploration ship couldn't win against 6 alien warships. Their only hope was to convince these beings that humans were not a threat. The Challenger was pulled into the belly of the largest Cathera ship. As soon as they were inside, the aliens cut power to most of their systems. Jake and his crew found themselves prisoners of beings they didn't understand. Back on Earth, Admiral Kate Morrison sat in her office at Fleet Command, waiting for Jake's regular report. When it didn't come, she knew something was wrong. Kate had been in space for 20 years and had never lost a ship. She wasn't about to start now. "Get me everything we have on the Kepler system," she told her staff, "and prepare a rescue fleet. If our people are in trouble out there, we're going to bring them home." Meanwhile, Jake and his senior officers were taken from their ship by the Cathera guards. The aliens were tall, thin beings made of living crystal. They moved without making sound and spoke to each other in musical tones that hurt human ears. The humans were brought to a large chamber, where they met General Zythara, the Cathera military commander. The alien general had been fighting for over 800 years, and it showed. Parts of his crystal body were cracked and damaged from centuries of war. Through a translation device, General Zythara spoke to the humans. His voice sounded like breaking glass mixed with music. "You are from the young species, the ones who watch our battles but do not understand." Lisa stepped forward as the leader of the group. "We understand that you're fighting a war. We want to help end it peacefully." The general's crystal body flashed with colors that the humans couldn't read. But his laugh was easy to understand. It was the sound of someone who had heard that joke too many times. "Peace," the general said. "We fought for peace once. 3,000 years ago we wanted peace. Now we fight because we must fight. The Vorthan Collective will never stop trying to destroy all organic life, so we fight them forever." Amy tried to understand what the general meant, but surely there must be a way to negotiate to find common ground. Common ground. General Zythara's crystal body turned dark red. "They destroyed our homeworld 2,000 years ago. We destroyed theirs 1,500 years ago. There is no common ground. There is only war." The humans were taken to prison cells deep inside the Cathera ship. The cells were made of the same living crystal as the ship itself, and the walls hummed with alien music that never stopped. Jake spent his time trying to understand their captors. The Cathera seemed tired, like soldiers who had been fighting. So long they had forgotten what they were fighting for. But they couldn't stop. The war was all they knew. Tony, always good with machines, managed to build a small communication device from parts he had hidden in his tool belt. He made contact with the Vorthan Collective, hoping to negotiate for their release. But Tony's message had an unexpected result. The Vorthan fleet, thinking the humans were Cathara spies, attacked the prison facility where the humans were being held. The battle was nothing like what the humans had seen before. Up close, the alien weapons were even more terrifying. Cathera harmonic cannons made sounds that could shatter metal. Vorthan bioweapons ate through the crystal walls like acid. Jake and his crew found themselves in the middle of a fight between beings who had perfected the art of killing each other over thousands of years. Both sides fought with a skill and hatred that came from endless practice. During the battle, Amy made a discovery that shocked her. While scanning the alien prisoners and wounded, she found something impossible. The DNA patterns of the Cathara and Vorthan were similar. Not the same, but close enough to suggest they had once been one species. "Lisa," Amy whispered, as explosions shook their prison. "I think they're fighting their own relatives. This might be a civil war that's gone on so long they've evolved into different species." The battle raged for 6 hours. When it was over, both sides had lost dozens of ships and thousands of crew members. The prison facility was destroyed, but by luck, the humans survived in an intact section. Lisa made a decision that would change everything. Instead of trying to escape or pick a side, she used Tony's communication device to send the same message to both fleets. "This is Captain Lisa Martinez of the human species," she broadcast. "We are not your enemies. We are not part of your war. We came here to explore and learn. We offer our services as neutral mediators to help end this conflict." The response from both sides was immediate and identical. Laughter. Cold, bitter laughter from beings who had been fighting for 3,000 years. "Mediate?" came the reply from the Vorthan commander. "You primitive organics think you can solve what we cannot? This war began before your species learned to make fire." The Cathera response was similar. "Young ones, you do not understand the depth of hatred between us and the machine spawn. There can be no peace until one side is completely destroyed." But something in Lisa's message had planted a seed. Some of the younger alien soldiers on both sides began to ask questions they had never asked before. If these humans could travel between stars and had no part in the ancient war, maybe there were other ways to live. Jake noticed it first when a young Cathera guard brought them food. The alien's crystal body showed colors that the humans were learning meant curiosity and doubt. "Is it true?" the guard asked in broken human language. "That your species does not fight endless wars?" Jake nodded. "We fight sometimes, but we also make peace. We learn to live together." The guard's body flashed with colors of surprise and hope. How? How do you stop fighting? Before Jake could answer, an older Kithra soldier arrived and took the guard away. But the question had been asked, and questions had a way of spreading. On the Vorthan ships, similar conversations were happening. Young Vorthan soldiers, biomechanical beings who had been programmed for war since birth, began to wonder if there was life beyond endless battle. As both fleets prepared to leave the destroyed system, the humans found themselves free, but stranded, in the wreckage of the prison facility. They had learned something important about their alien captors, but they were no closer to stopping the war. Tony managed to repair their communication system enough to send a message to Earth. Admiral Morrison, this is Tony Garcia. The crew is alive, but we're in serious trouble. The aliens out here have been fighting a war for 3,000 years, and they're heading toward human space. We need help, and we need it fast. The message would take months to reach Earth. By then, both alien fleets would be preparing for their next battle, and humanity would have to decide whether to run or fight. Jake and his crew spent 3 days floating in the wreckage of the destroyed prison facility. Their small escape pod had basic life support, but they were stranded in space with no way to reach Earth. The alien fleets had moved on, leaving behind the usual aftermath of their endless war. Sam Rodriguez worked on the navigation system while Tony tried to repair their engines. "Commander," Sam said, looking up from his calculations, "I've been studying the battle patterns from both sides. There's something strange about how they fight." Jake moved over to look at Sam's work. The navigation officer had spread out charts, showing 3,000 years of battle locations gathered from the wreckage around them. "Look at this." Sam pointed to the data. "They fight in the same places, over and over. Every 50 years, they have a major battle in the Rigel system. Every 30 years, they fight near Vega. It's like they're following a schedule." Ryan joined them at the small table. "That doesn't make sense. Why would they fight in predictable patterns?" Amy had been studying biological samples from both alien races. She looked up from her scanner with excitement. "Because they're not trying to win anymore, they're just trying to keep the war going." The humans looked at her in confusion. Amy continued, "I've analyzed DNA from both species. They're slowly evolving in response to their constant warfare. The Kithera are becoming better at making those harmonic weapons. The Vorthan are developing better biomechanical armor. The war is making them into new species." Tony stopped working on the engines. "You mean they don't want the war to end?" "I think they can't imagine life without it," Amy replied. "They've been fighting for so long, war is all they know. Peace would mean changing everything about their societies." Jake realized what this meant. "If they fight in patterns, we can predict where they'll be. And if we know where they'll be, we can get there first," Sam finished. "We can be waiting for them." The crew spent the next day analyzing the battle data while Tony worked to get their engines running. When he finally got power back, they had a complete map of the alien war patterns for the next 100 years. "Set course for Earth," Jake ordered. "We need to tell Admiral Morrison what we've learned." The journey home took 2 months. During that time, the crew worked on their report and tried to understand what they had seen. Lisa spent hours going over Amy's biological data, while Ryan studied the tactical information they had gathered. When they finally reached Earth, Admiral Kate Morrison was waiting for them at the orbital station. Kate had been Jake's instructor at the academy, and she knew him well enough to see that he had changed. The young explorer who had left Earth was now a man who had seen the horrors of galactic war. "Report," Kate said simply as Jake and his officers sat down in the briefing room. Jake told the story of their capture and what they had learned about the endless war. When he finished, the room was quiet for a long time. General Pete Collins, Earth's top military strategist, was the first to speak. 3,000 years of war, and you're saying they've forgotten why they're fighting?" "They remember the attacks," Lisa replied. "Each side remembers every world the other has destroyed, but they don't remember what started the fighting in the first place." Kate studied the battle pattern data that Sam had compiled. "These predictions, are you sure they're accurate?" Sam nodded. "I've checked them against historical battle records we found in the wreckage. They've been following these patterns for centuries." The next major engagement will be in the Centauri Drift 18 months from now. General Collins leaned back in his chair. Gentlemen, ladies, I think we have an opportunity here. These aliens have been fighting each other for so long, they can't see the war clearly anymore. But we can. Kate understood immediately. You want to intervene. I want to end it, Collins replied. But not through diplomacy. Both sides have already laughed at the idea of human mediation. We need to end this war by winning it. Ryan looked confused. Win it for which side? Collins smiled grimly. For both sides. We make them both winners by giving them something better than endless war. The plan Collins proposed was audacious. Instead of trying to make peace between the Kythera and Vorthan, humanity would infiltrate both sides. They would learn alien languages, understand their cultures, and slowly guide both fleets toward a final battle that neither could truly win. The key, Collins explained, is to make both sides think they're about to achieve total victory. But arrange it so that victory is impossible. When they realize they can't destroy each other, maybe they'll finally be ready to try something else. Amy raised a concern. General, these are species that have been perfecting warfare for 3 millennia. How can we possibly outfight them? We don't outfight them, Collins replied. We outthink them. They've been fighting the same war for so long, they've stopped adapting. But we're new to this. We can see solutions they can't because we're not. Trapped by their history. Kate assigned different crews to infiltrate each alien faction. Jake would lead a team into Kythera space, while Chris Murphy, a young lieutenant commander, would take another team to work with the Vorthan Collective. The infiltration teams would need months of preparation. They had to learn alien languages that humans had never heard before. They had to understand cultures built entirely around warfare. Most importantly, they had to convince beings who had been fighting for millennia to trust newcomers from a species that had barely learned to travel between stars. Lisa was assigned to coordinate between both teams from Earth. She would analyze the intelligence they gathered and help Collins refine the plan to end the war. Before the teams left for alien space, Jake met privately with Admiral Morrison. Kate, what if we're wrong? What if we can't end this war? What if we just make it worse? Kate looked out at the stars through her office window. Jake, in 18 months, that war is coming to our part of the galaxy, whether we do anything or not. Our choice isn't whether to get involved. Our choice is whether we get involved on our terms or wait for the war to come to us. Jake nodded, understanding the stakes. And if our plan fails? Then humanity learns to fight the same endless war these aliens have been fighting. And in a few thousand years, maybe some other young species will find us and wonder why we're destroying everything we touch. The infiltration teams left Earth 6 months later. Jake's team departed on the UES Phoenix, humanity's newest stealth ship, heading for Kythera space. Chris Murphy's team left on the UES Shadow, bound for Vorthan territory. As Earth fell away behind them, Jake wondered if they would ever see home again. They were heading into a war zone where species far older and more advanced than humanity had been killing each other since before human civilization began. But they carried with them something the aliens had lost long ago. The hope that even the most bitter enemies could learn to live in peace. Whether that hope would be enough remained to be seen. 6 months into their mission, Jake's team had successfully infiltrated Kythera space. The Phoenix was hidden in an asteroid field while Jake and 3 of his officers lived aboard a Kythera battlecruiser called the Harmonic Blade. Learning the Kythera language had been difficult. The crystal beings spoke in musical tones that changed meaning based on pitch and rhythm. But Nina Walsh, a former Earth diplomat who had joined Jake's team, proved to have a natural talent for alien languages. She could now speak Kythera well enough to pass as a translator for other species. Jake had taken on the identity of a military advisor from a distant Kythera colony. The story they told was that their home world had been cut off from the main empire for centuries, and they were rejoining the war effort. It was a believable lie because the Kythera Empire was so vast that even they had lost track of some of their outer colonies. Commander Jaxul called young Kythera warrior Nithali. That was Jake's alien name. General Zythara wants to speak with you about the next battle plan. Jake had become friends with Nithali over the past months. The young warrior was only 60 years old, which was very young for a Kithara. He had been born into the war, and had never known anything else, but he was starting to ask questions. In the general's quarters, Jake found Zithara studying holographic battle plans. The Kithara general was planning an attack on a Vorthan supply depot in the Rigel system. "Jaxul," the general said in his musical voice, "your tactical suggestions have been valuable. Tell me, what do you think of this plan?" Jake studied the hologram. The plan was solid but predictable, following patterns that the Kithara had used for centuries. "General, may I suggest a different approach? What if we attack from an unexpected direction?" The changes Jake suggested seemed small, but they would force the Vorthan fleet to move to a specific location. That location was exactly where General Collins needed them to be for the final phase of humanity's plan. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Chris Murphy and his team had infiltrated Vorthan space. The biomechanical aliens were harder to fool than the Kithara because they shared information through direct neural links. But Maria Lopez, a computer specialist, had found a way to hack into their network. Chris had convinced the Vorthan leadership that he was a captured Kithara who had been converted to their cause. The Vorthan loved converting their enemies, turning them into biomechanical servants. They believed Chris's story because they wanted to believe it. Unit Chris 7, called Supreme Processor Vorth 9, using Chris's Vorthan designation. "Your intelligence on Kithara battle tactics has been most useful. We have a new mission for you." The mission was to help plan an attack on the same Kithara supply depot that General Zithara was targeting. Both sides were planning to attack the same place at the same time, which was exactly what the human plan required. Maria had been busy, planting logic viruses throughout the Vorthan computer network. The viruses were designed to look like normal system updates, but they slowly changed how the Vorthan artificial intelligence made decisions. The Vorthan collective was controlled by an ancient AI that had been running their war effort for over 2,000 years. The AI was so old and complex that even the Vorthan didn't fully understand how it worked. It just gave orders, and they followed them. But Maria's viruses were making the AI think differently. Instead of choosing tactics designed to drag out the war, it was starting to choose strategies that would force quick, decisive battles. The AI didn't realize it was being reprogrammed. It thought it was just getting better at war. Back on Earth, Admiral Kate Morrison received progress reports from both infiltration teams. Lisa Martinez, now working as the mission coordinator, compiled the intelligence data in her laboratory. "Kate," Lisa said during one of their weekly meetings, "Amy's biological analysis was right. The Kithara and Vorthan were once the same species. The war didn't just divide them politically. It actually changed their evolution." Kate studied Amy's genetic data. "How is that possible?" 3,000 years of environmental pressure, Lisa explained. The Kithara developed crystal-based biology to survive harmonic weapons. The Vorthan became biomechanical to resist Kithara energy attacks. They've been changing themselves to fight each other more effectively. General Collins joined the meeting with news from the tactical front. Both teams report that their alien fleets are moving toward the target system. Jake's Kithara fleet will arrive in 3 weeks. Chris's Vorthan fleet will arrive 2 days later. Kate looked at the star charts. "And our fleet?" "Already in position," Collins replied. "Admiral Blake is waiting in the outer system with 300 ships. It's the largest human fleet ever assembled." Lisa felt nervous about the plan. "Pete, are you sure this will work? We're gambling with the lives of both infiltration teams and the entire Earth fleet." Collins nodded seriously. "Lisa, if we do nothing, this war spreads to human space within 5 years. Both sides are running out of room to fight in empty systems. Eventually, they'll start fighting in systems with inhabited worlds. Earth will be just another casualty." The plan was complex but simple in concept. Both alien fleets would arrive at the target system expecting to fight each other. Instead, they would find the human fleet waiting for them. Jake and Chris would reveal their true identities at the crucial moment, proving that humanity had successfully infiltrated both sides. The shock of discovering human spies in their ranks, combined with the presence of a third fleet, would force both alien sides to reconsider everything they thought they knew about the war. But the plan depended on perfect timing and a lot of luck. If either alien fleet discovered the human infiltrators too early, or if the Earth fleet arrived at the wrong time, the result could be a three-way war that would be even worse than what already existed. As the mission entered its final phase, Jake sent a coded message to the Phoenix. "Nina, begin phase 2. Start asking the young Kithara about what they would do if the war ended." The question seemed innocent, but it was actually the most dangerous thing Jake could ask. For 3,000 years, no Kithara had been allowed to imagine life without war. Just thinking about it was considered treason. But Nina asked anyway, starting with Neithali and a few other young warriors she had befriended. Their reactions were exactly what the humans had hoped for. Instead of anger, the young Kithara showed curiosity and hope. "What would we do?" Neithali repeated the question to himself. "I have never thought about this. We would explore. We would build. We would create music instead of weapons." The idea spread quietly through the ship like a virus. Young Kithara began to whisper about what peace might look like. For the first time in their lives, they imagined a future that didn't involve endless battle. On the Vorthan ships, Chris and Maria were having similar conversations. Young Vorthan soldiers, programmed from birth to think only of war, began to malfunction as they tried to process the concept of peace. The stage was set for humanity's greatest gamble. In less than 3 weeks, the 3 most powerful fleets in the galaxy would meet in battle. The outcome would determine whether the endless war would finally end, or whether humanity would become just another casualty in a conflict older than their entire civilization. The Nexus system had been chosen for humanity's intervention because it was strategically important to both alien fleets. Ancient star charts showed it was once home to the original species before they split into Kithara and Vorthan. Now it was just empty space, but both sides still fought over it every few decades. Admiral Ryan Blake commanded the human fleet from his flagship, the UES Defiant. 300 Earth ships waited in the outer system, hidden behind gas clouds and asteroid fields. Ryan had been promoted after proving himself during the initial alien contact. Now he faced the biggest challenge in human history. "Admiral," called his communications officer, "we're receiving signals from both alien fleets. The Kithara are 3 hours out. The Vorthan will arrive 6 hours after that." Ryan nodded. The timing was perfect, just as General Collins had planned. The Kithara would arrive first and set up their battle positions. When the Vorthan appeared, both sides would be focused on each other. That's when humanity would reveal itself. On the Kithara flagship Harmonic Blade, Jake stood beside General Zithara as the alien fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The crystal ships formed their traditional battle formation, spreading out across the system in a pattern they had used for hundreds of years. "Jaxul," the general said to Jake, "soon we will destroy another Vorthan fleet. Today will be remembered as a great victory." Jake felt sick to his stomach. He knew that in a few hours he would betray the general's trust, but he also knew that betrayal was the only way to save both species from their endless cycle of destruction. Nina Walsh was on the bridge, monitoring communications between Kithara ships. She had become popular among the crew because she could translate difficult concepts between different alien dialects. The young Kithara warriors especially liked talking to her about life beyond the war. "Nina," whispered Neithali, "what you said about peace, about building instead of destroying, do you really believe such a thing is possible?" Nina looked at the young warrior's crystal face, seeing hope in his alien features. "Yes, Neithali. I've seen it work. Species can learn to live together instead of fighting." 6 hours later, the Vorthan fleet arrived exactly as predicted. Their biomechanical ships looked like giant insects made of metal and flesh. They immediately began forming their own battle lines, facing off against the Kithara formation. On the Vorthan command ship, Chris Murphy stood beside Supreme Processor Vorth 9 as the alien AI calculated attack patterns. Chris had spent months earning the trust of the Vorthan leadership by providing accurate intelligence about Kithara tactics. Unit Chris 7, the Supreme Processor announced, "Today we will demonstrate the superiority of biomechanical evolution. over primitive crystal structures. The Cathera will finally understand their inferiority. Chris watched as both fleets prepared to destroy each other in the same pattern they had followed for 3,000 years. In 30 minutes, Admiral Blake would give the signal, and everything would change. Maria Lopez was in the Vorthan computer core, making final adjustments to her logic viruses. The alien AI was now completely under her influence, though it didn't know it. When the time came, the AI would follow her programming instead of its ancient war protocols. "Maria to Chris?" she whispered into her hidden communicator. "The AI is ready. When you give the signal, it will broadcast the truth about the war's origins to every Vorthan ship." The battle began, as it always did. Both fleets opened fire with weapons that could crack planets. Space filled with energy beams, projectile swarms, and exotic matter that ate through whatever it touched. Ships on both sides began to explode as the ancient dance of destruction continued. But something was different this time. Ryan Blake had positioned his human fleet perfectly. As the alien fleets focused on each other, 300 Earth ships moved out of hiding and surrounded both battle groups. "This is Admiral Ryan Blake of the Earth Defense Force," came the broadcast on all frequencies. "Both alien fleets are now surrounded. Cease fire immediately and prepare to receive communications." The reaction from both alien fleets was immediate confusion, followed by rage. How had primitive humans managed to surround the two most powerful military forces in the galaxy? That's when Jake and Chris revealed themselves. "General Zuthera," Jake said, removing his disguise and speaking in clear human English. "I am Lieutenant Commander Jake Sullivan of the human species. I have been aboard your ship for 6 months, learning your tactics and earning your trust." On the Vorthan flagship, Chris made a similar announcement. "Supreme Processor Vorth 9, I am Lieutenant Commander Chris Murphy. For 6 months I have been studying your fleet and your war patterns." The revelation that humans had successfully infiltrated both sides sent shockwaves through the alien fleets. For beings who had been fighting each other for millennia, the idea that a third species had outmaneuvered them both was almost impossible to believe, but the evidence was undeniable. Jake stood on the Cathara bridge, obviously human. Chris was clearly visible on the Vorthan command deck. Both had been trusted advisors to the alien leadership for months. Captain Lisa Martinez's voice came from the human fleet. "Commanders of both fleets, we have gathered evidence about the true origins of your war. We are transmitting this data to all ships now." Amy Parker's biological research flowed to both alien fleets, showing them that they had once been the same species. The genetic data proved that 3,000 years of war had literally changed them into different life forms. But the most shocking revelation came from Maria's virus program. The Vorthan AI began broadcasting its deepest memory files, showing the original cause of the war. It had been a dispute over mining rights on a planet called Synthesis. The planet had been destroyed in the first year of fighting, but the war had continued anyway. 3,000 years, General Zuthera said, his crystal voice full of disbelief. 3,000 years of war over a world that no longer exists. Supreme Processor Vorth 9's mechanical voice crackled with confusion. "Error. Error. Original objectives no longer valid. War parameters require revision." Both alien fleets stopped firing. For the first time in recorded galactic history, Cathara and Vorthan ships floated near each other without exchanging weapons fire. But humanity's greatest challenge was just beginning. Some aliens on both sides refused to believe the evidence. Others demanded revenge against the humans for their deception. The younger crew members wanted to know more about this thing called peace, while the older veterans couldn't imagine life without war. Jake realized that stopping the shooting was only the first step. Now they had to convince two civilizations to rebuild their entire societies around something other than hatred and destruction. The moment of truth had arrived. Humanity had ended the battle, but ending the war would require something much more difficult: teaching ancient enemies how to trust each other again. The immediate aftermath of the revelation was chaos. Both alien fleets hung motionless in space as their crews tried to process what they had learned. 3,000 years of war had been based on a misunderstanding about a planet that no longer existed. Some ships from both sides began moving toward the human fleet, their weapons charging. Other ships turned their guns on their own allies as internal arguments broke out. The galaxy's oldest war was tearing apart from the inside. All human ships. Defensive positions. Admiral Ryan Blake ordered from the Defiant. Do not fire unless fired upon. We're here to make peace, not start a bigger war. On the Cathera flagship, Jake found himself in the middle of a heated argument between General Zythara and his officers. Some wanted to destroy the human fleet for their deception. Others were fascinated by the idea that a young species had outsmarted them. You used our trust against us, accused Commander Kurth Anno, one of the general's senior officers. How are we supposed to believe anything you say now? Jake looked around the room at alien faces that had become familiar over the months. Because we could have used that trust to help either side destroy the other. Instead, we used it to show you the truth. Ninth Ali, the young warrior who had become Jake's friend, spoke up. Commander Jacksul, Jake, you showed me videos of your homeworld. You told me about human families, human art, human dreams. Were those lies too? No, Jake replied. Those were real. That's what life looks like when you're not always preparing for war. On the Vorthan command ship, Chris faced similar challenges. The biomechanical aliens were designed to follow the orders of their AI leadership, but Maria's viruses had corrupted those systems. Many Vorthan soldiers were experiencing something they had never felt before. Confusion about their purpose. Unit Chris 7, Supreme Processor Vorth 9 announced, your deception has caused system-wide errors in our war protocols. Logic dictates that you should be eliminated. Logic also dictates that you should examine new data when it becomes available, Chris replied. Your AI has been making decisions based on outdated information for 3,000 years. Maybe it's time for an update. Maria had done more than just plant viruses. She had given the Vorthan AI access to human databases about conflict resolution, diplomacy, and peace treaties. The ancient computer was now trying to process concepts it had never been programmed to understand. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Naith Ali and several other young Kithara warriors used their ship's communication system to contact Vorthan vessels directly. It was the first time in centuries that the two species had tried to talk to each other instead of just shooting. Vorthan ships, Naith Ali broadcast in his musical voice. We are tired of fighting. We want to know if you are tired too. The response came from a young Vorthan unit designation Beta 47. Cathera vessel, we have been programmed for war since creation, but new data suggests war is not the only option. We are curious about alternatives. Admiral Kate Morrison arrived in the Nexus system 3 days later with additional human ships and a team of diplomats. The situation was still dangerous, with some alien factions demanding revenge against humanity for their interference. Admiral Lisa Martinez reported as Kate came aboard the Defiant. We have 17 different factions among the two alien fleets. Some want peace, some want war, some want to blame us for everything. It's complicated. Kate surveyed the scene through the bridge windows. Hundreds of alien ships floated in loose formations, their crews arguing about what to do next. How many ships are willing to try peace? About 40% of the Cathera fleet and 30% of the Vorthan, Ryan replied. The younger crew members mostly support ending the war. The older veterans think we're naive fools who don't understand the depth of their hatred. General Pete Collins arrived with the diplomatic team and immediately began working on a solution. He proposed something unprecedented. Humanity would establish a neutral zone between Cathera and Vorthan space, with human forces preventing any military contact between the two species. You're talking about an occupation, protested General Zythara. Your species is asking us to accept human rule over our ancient territories. Not rule, Collins corrected. Peacekeeping. We'll maintain the separation until both your species can learn to coexist without violence. Supreme Processor Vorth 9's mechanical voice crackled through the communicator. Human proposal requires extensive resource commitment from your species. Why would you sacrifice for beings who cannot solve their own conflicts? Lisa answered for humanity. Because the alternative is worse. Your war was about to spread to inhabited systems. We had to choose between letting you destroy the galaxy or stepping in to stop you. The negotiations took weeks. Many ships from both alien fleets left the system, refusing to accept human mediation, but enough remained to make a difference. A fragile ceasefire was established, with human ships patrolling the border between Kythera and Vorthon space. Jake and Chris were both promoted to commander and given new assignments. Jake became the human liaison to reformed Kythera units, while Chris worked with Vorthon factions that wanted to try peaceful cooperation. Amy Parker established the first interspecies medical research station, where former enemies worked together to heal the genetic damage caused by millennia of warfare. Tony Garcia led mixed engineering teams that began the massive task of rebuilding worlds destroyed in the ancient conflict. Nina Walsh became humanity's first alien cultural specialist, helping Kythera and Vorthon individuals learn to communicate without hatred. Maria Lopez worked with reformed Vorthon AI systems, teaching them to solve problems through cooperation instead of conquest. 5 years after the intervention, Admiral Ryan Blake stood on the observation deck of Joint Peace Station Alpha. The station was built in the neutral zone, staffed by humans, Kythera, and Vorthon working together. It wasn't perfect peace, but it was peace. "Admiral," reported Commander Jake Sullivan, who now served as the station's deputy commander, "we have confirmation from the outer colonies. No major battles reported in any sector for 6 months, the longest peace in 3,000 years. Lisa Martinez, now Earth's galactic ambassador, joined them on the observation deck. "I just received a communication from the Andromeda Gateway. 3 new species want to establish diplomatic relations with the galactic community. Word is spreading that peace is possible." Through the station windows, they could see ships from all 3 species working together on construction projects. Former enemies were learning to build instead of destroy. It was a sight that would have been impossible just 5 years earlier. But their work was far from finished. The galaxy was vast, full of other conflicts and other species trapped in cycles of violence. Humanity had proven that even the most ancient wars could be ended, but each victory required sacrifice and courage. Kate Morrison, now Fleet Admiral of the Galactic Peacekeeping Force, often reminded her officers that their success came with a price. Earth had committed to policing conflicts they didn't start, protecting species they barely understood, and maintaining peace in a galaxy that had known only war. "The easy part was stopping the shooting," Kate told new recruits during their training. "The hard part is keeping the peace. Every day we have to prove that cooperation works better than conquest." As Jake looked out at the mixed crews working together on the station, he thought about how far they had all come. The Challenger's original mission had been simple exploration. They never expected to end up as peacekeepers in a galactic war. But humanity had found its place among the stars not as conquerors or victims, but as the species that refused to accept that some problems couldn't be solved. They had looked at a 3,000-year war and decided it could be ended. Against all odds, they had been right. The endless war finally had an end. And it came not through victory or defeat, but through the stubborn human belief that there was always a better way, even when ancient enemies couldn't see it themselves. In the years that followed, other species would learn about the humans who ended the galaxy's longest war. Some would fear them, calling them manipulators who imposed peace through trickery. Others would hope that if humanity could solve that impossible conflict, maybe they could help with smaller problems too. But for Jake and his crew, the real victory wasn't ending the war. It was watching former enemies become friends, seeing young Kythera and Vorthon learn to dream about futures that didn't involve destruction. They had given 2 ancient species something they had lost long ago: hope. The galaxy was still dangerous, still full of conflicts and challenges. But now there was proof that even the most hopeless situations could be changed. The endless war had ended because humanity refused to accept that some fights had to go on forever. And in space stations and colonies across the galaxy, human peacekeepers continued their work, one conflict at a time, one friendship at a time, one hope at a time.